Hello, everyone, and welcome in the final part of the presentation of our findings on neurodiversity in engineering. In this part, we'll be making some suggestions for practice for teams, line managers, and senior management.
So for teams, we're recommending that when you're working in any team, that you make sure that all voices are equally heard, giving people an opportunity to kind of speak and input their ideas. If you notice that somebody's perhaps a bit quiet, making a conscious effort to listen, and also being open to kind of other suggestions that might not fit with the way that you thought that something would be carried out. Making sure that ways you socialise, both inside and outside of work, are inclusive. So one of the things that we found was that kind of our participants really enjoyed kind of working with their teams within the organisation, but quite often they found that ways to socialise outside of work created barriers to getting involved within conversations, and just ensuring that you're not kind of just sitting by and watching. If you do notice kind of discrimination taking place, that you do kind of step in and voice as well. And our suggestions for line managers are thinking around kind of how we write job descriptions. So are you providing really specific job descriptions to HR? Do they kind of outline key skills and competencies for the role? Sometimes neurodivergent candidates might be put off applying because they can't picture themselves within the role, when actually they do have the skill sets needed, but those skill sets aren't always explicit on job descriptions. So reflect on your decisions for promotion as well. Are your promotion criteria fair? And do they also recognise the strengths of neurodivergent employees? So we've heard from some of our participants that sometimes when it comes to promotion, their strengths are often kind of celebrated day to day, but not recognised when it comes to promotion and performance reviews as well. So this kind of leads on to our next kind of implication, which is reflecting on what you consider as good performance in selection interviews, so ensuring that you have really kind of clear criteria. And monitoring the well-being of your team as well. So we've heard from some of our participants that they find it really, really challenging to switch off, particularly when they're becoming hyper-focused on something that needs to be done. So just setting really clear boundaries with regards to what is expected at work, and just keeping an eye out and making sure that none of your employees are seeming kind of very stressed. Have you noticed any instances of bullying? If you have, just kind of having open conversations with employees as well, and making sure that you're offering reasonable adjustments. If somebody is kind of appearing to struggle with a task, is there anything about that task that is creating a barrier that you could have an open conversation with and remove the barriers by offering reasonable adjustments? And we also encourage you to be kind of open and experiment and encourage different ways of approaching engineering tasks. So one of the biggest findings, as we've discussed in previous presentations, was the idea of kind of working in one set way. Does it have to be in that one set way, or are there different ways that the task can be approached? And remember to trust and empower your team members as well. So I'll hand you over to Vanda.
So what are the implications for senior management? So first of all, I would like to invite senior management and HR colleagues to reconsider the entire recruitment process and selection process. So as we discussed, there are many barriers identified, such as the way, as Lucy referred to before as well, the way that job descriptions are written, what we expect them to do, the tasks they are asked to complete for shortlisting, etc. So, and remember that most people, as we said, do not disclose at this stage. So do we really need all these tasks? Are they really inclusive? Do we keep in mind that people might struggle with certain requirements for our application process? Also, as we discussed in the second part of our presentation, getting in, Many of our participants entered the profession through apprenticeships and placements. So please consider offering more opportunities for apprenticeships and placements to neurodivergent students. Because as we said, you give them the opportunity to shine and showcase their strengths without relying necessarily on their academic performance. Also, an important finding throughout our study, as we said, is around the diagnosis and reasonable adjustments. Many of the adults we interviewed, many of the participants we interviewed, got their diagnosis after their children were diagnosed with a neurodiversity, ADHD, autism, etc. So they only then they became aware that they might be neurodivergent themselves. So please provide some support with the diagnosis process. Are they aware of neurodiversity? Can you help them access diagnosis earlier, taking into consideration the long waits? And once they do that, do you offer reasonable adjustments? Also, try to introduce a standardized process for requesting reasonable adjustments once they get their diagnosis, because many participants shared with us that their line managers or their organizations did not have a quite straightforward and accessible way to do so. And give power to the employee to discuss openly what aspects of the role may present barriers and work together to find a solution. Many of our participants said that they were offered a very limited range of reasonable adjustments that were not always needed or enough. However, many of them also complained about the fact that it was only on them to make the decision what reasonable adjustments they might require. And taking into consideration the fact that they managed to cope in such an adverse environment for so many years, they thought that they didn't need any. And so, have an open discussion that they don't feel judged. Do they struggle with something? What is it? And can you do as an organization to support them? So another main recommendation is change your organizational culture. So as we saw, many of the participants chose to apply to an organization once they saw its commitment to inclusion. So communicate your commitment and make your best, do your best to change and render your organizational culture truly inclusive. Recognize the strengths of neurodivergent employees and celebrate them. And as Lucy said, and as she covered in the third part of the presentation about the one set way, our participants often struggled to show that their way of working and solving engineering problems is equally valid and effective. So, give them the opportunity to show it and prove it to you. Highlight neurodivergent role models so that, and because this will help them discuss their neurodiversity more openly. We've discussed about in the part, like the moving up part of the presentation, how important it is to share and disclose so that they can support other colleagues, and also invest in organization-wide neurodiversity training, because unfortunately, still we don't know a lot about how neurodivergent employees approach different tasks. Unfortunately, there are a lot of instances of discrimination, bullying, and harassment in the workplace, and we need to make sure that we address them. Last but not least, implications for HR colleagues. So make sure you audit all existing policies using a neurodiversity lens, preferably in consultation with neurodivergent employees, employee resource groups, and trade unions. Introduce policy and guidance specific for neurodiversity because, as we said, line managers often did not know what they need to do, what they can do to support their team members. Offer neurodiversity training to all employees and, most importantly, line managers, and rethink the career pathways offered and, of course, the job design. And remember, our motto is good HR practice is inclusive practice. So thank you very much. And here, make a favor. So if you could please let us know if you share your findings with your organization or share the results in other social media or with a professional body. We would be very happy to hear about the impact of our research, and we would be more than happy to share our research in your organization or discuss further opportunities for collaboration. Thank you from me.
Thank you.